What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. I'm joined by my guy Morgan and Ryan Matthews today. We're going to talk about Lions defensive line and where they are ranked according to PFF in one of their latest articles where they went about ranking some of the different position groups. And if this is your first time catching one of these videos, we're actually doing a bit of a series where we're going to either look at entire groups like we are with the defensive line, or and as well as we did with the offensive line, or look at very specific position groups and kind of react to how PFF has individual players or entire groups ranked according to their standards. And this one is probably going to be one of our more controversials, and I expect a lot of people are going to get a little up in arms in the comment section. But listen, have at it, because this is just going to be our honest opinion. Ryan, I'm going to start with you, and let's just start with the fact that, like, going at it like this, PFF has the Detroit Lions as the fourth best defensive line going into the 2024 season. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I don't see how that's plausible. I love this team. I love some of the players on this team. I love specifically some of the players on this defensive line. I, in good conscience, could never have them as fourth. So could you tell me either why I'm wrong or, I don't know, agree with me? Back me up here.
Yeah. I don't know how they're a top 5 unit. I'll say that. I could see them being a top 10 unit, but it still requires a lot of projection. When I look at this football team as a whole, we feel really confident about the offense. When we look at the defense, there's a lot of optimism around the secondary being so revamped that they did what they did last year, but then they kicked it up a notch because they spent a first-round pick and a second-round pick on cornerbacks, right? They trade for Carlton Davis. The secondary feels like it has more momentum than it did last year. The linebacker group seems like it's going to be pretty rock solid. You have Anzalone. You have Jack Campbell, who they're expecting big things coming into year 2. You have Derek Barnes. You have some players at the linebacker position. My biggest question mark about the Detroit Lions football team is how productive can their defensive line be? Like that seems like the biggest question mark that I have. And I know when we talked about Aiden Hutchinson, Meko, there were some people that were a little bit, I don't know, curious, maybe, I guess is the nicest way to put it, about
I was going to say, that's the nicest ways. Yeah, that's the nicest way to put it.
About how we felt about Aiden Hutchinson. We're big fans of Aiden Hutchinson. I think all of us can agree that he's a really, really good football player. Probably one of the top 10 edge defenders in the NFL. But going past that, when you look at this line being ranked 4th amongst all the teams in the NFL, Morgan, there's just a couple of other units that you point to and say, well, those guys have a track record of doing things for multiple years. Those guys should be ahead of the Lions. Those guys should be ahead of the Lions. Right now, there's just a lot of projection. It's like, how much of an impact is DJ Reader going to make, and how soon will it be? Coming back from injury, coming back from the quad tear. Aleem McNeil, is he going to take another step? Who's playing opposite of Aiden Hutchinson seems to be on everybody's bingo sheet. If you're an NFL beatnik, like everybody's asking the question is, who's opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, and why didn't the Lions address that? It's a legitimate question. I think that there's answers to it, and we'll probably talk about it during the video. But Morgan, who are some of the teams that you see beyond the Lions that you're like, oh, I'm going to stash those guys ahead of the Lions without a doubt?
I mean, from the jump, the Raiders, right? Like the Raiders have Max Crosby, who you guys know about Max Crosby if you watch football at all. And then they added Christian Wilkins. Like we were talking about it before, we were like, they did add Christian Wilkins, right? And you're just like, dang.
Yeah.
Because Christian Wilkins is, in that tier. It's like him, Quinn and Williams, of like the most disruptive interior defensive lineman in the game.
You get into that list of guys like, he might be like knocking on that door, right? He got paid like he's knocking on that door.
I was going to say easily a top 5 defensive tackle. Easily for me, Christian Wilkins is a top 5 defensive tackle.
So you have them on the same line, and like having them below the Lions is wild. Like having the Browns below the Lions is crazy. It's only one ranking, but still you're just like, really? They got Myles Garrett. And like I think Aiden Hutchinson is going to take a step this year where he's going to be in, compared to them. Like I really do. I think he's going to take his step and be among the elite. But for right now, like we know Myles Garrett has been there like for the last several years now, and for my money, he's probably the best in football. So I don't, they added Zadarius Smith. They have Dalvin Tomlinson. They said, the depth is there. So I don't know. There's a couple teams like, and we'll get into the, playing devil's advocate to the Lions argument, but yeah, just from the, you look at that list, you're like, I don't know. The Cowboys, even as much as I hate the Cowboys, y'all, Micah Parsons is a terror. They still have Demarcus Lawrence. Like they have Mozzie
Continuously
Smith.
overlooked. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, yeah, he had a really good year last year. I think he got overlooked because they have Parsons now, who is different. The way he rushes the passer is just so annoying to deal with, I'm sure, as a tackle, because he's so low to the ground. He's so fast, but also so strong, and his hands are heavy. I wouldn't want to block him, that's for sure. So I don't really. There's a bunch of teams, right? Like, what do y'all think? What's another team?
I was gonna say I also liked I like the Steelers kind of being a little bit better than the Lions right now. They have TJ Watt. They have a group of guys. We talked about this when we talked about our offensive line, right? Just like the continuity of an offensive line and how that has led to production. I feel like the same thing is true with the Steelers and their defensive line. TJ Watt is absolutely the engine that keeps that machine going, but they have a collection of guys that allow him to play the way he's able to play and allow him to be the wrecking ball he is. And when I look at the Lions, yes, there is a lot of projection, like you're saying, Ryan. I just don't think they've yet proven that they have, that Aiden Hutchinson can replicate what TJ Watt is doing on a week in, week out basis, or replicate what a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby is doing it on a week in, week out basis. And I know we're talking about them as a group, but these are groups that have been very productive for like not just one season, but for season upon season the last few years in the NFL.
Yeah. And the one thing we haven't talked about, though, is the run defense. And when you think about that aspect of it, okay, I can see how that's going to bump up the Lions' overall grade, because Aleem McNeil, you want to talk about top 5 defensive tackles? I think he's a top 5 defensive tackle when it comes to run defense. Maybe something that's keeping him out of being in that elite tier of maybe the top 2 or top 3. You're talking about just more consistency out of him in that respect, but that's also him as a pass rusher. So again, that kind of goes back to our previous conversation about consistency and showing it for year after year after year. But the run defense, you figure you put DJ Reader next to Aleem McNeil, and you have Aiden Hutchinson, who is about as solid and as steady as they come. Okay. Like, now I understand, because you're talking about I don't know, what their floor is probably top 10. Their ceiling is the best in the NFL when it comes to stopping the run, because that's who they are. That's how they play defense. They play defense to try to get you into 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 9. And they want to try to do everything they can to put their pass rushing unit out there on the field, because that's what they've had to do for so long, right, Morgan? Like, when it comes to the Lions being successful in getting stops on defense, it's all relied on your first down run got you a yard. Your second down play, it was an incomplete pass. You're at 3rd and 9. This is our best chance to get off the field. And it was going to be throwing everything but the kitchen sink at you, and sometimes even the kitchen sink with Aaron Glenn last year, and what he was doing with blitzing at such a high rate and everything. But it all starts with the run defense, Morgan. And are you as high on the Lions' run defense as I am?
Definitely. Their aspirations have to be being a top 5 unit, because you add DJ Reader, and make no mistake about it, they devote a lot of resources to stopping the run. Like you said, Ryan, like they're going to be like, all right, we're going to try to stop you on 1st and 2nd down, so we can get in an obvious passing down where we don't really have to guess, and we can just sell out and play the pass, or whether that's being in cover 0 and manning up across the board, or dropping in zone. Like, Aaron Glenn likes to mix it up. And having DJ Reader, you have Marcus Davenport, John Kaminsky, Josh Pascal. Like, you have a bunch of guys who are good, hopefully Broderick Martin, who are good against the run, and they're deep too. So I do see that side of it. What about you, Meko?
I think that's the only explanation I could have to Ryan's point of even having them in the top 10, right? Is that there may not be a better run defense unit in the NFL outside of what you have in Detroit. And so for that reason, I think I could put them in the top 10. I could probably have them around 9 or 10, just because there are teams on here that, again, are great at rushing the passer, but yeah, probably not as good when it comes down to being that consistent on 1st and 2nd down. And that's something, to Ryan's point, That's what this team is truly built their identity on, is that they're going to make you have to grind it out, that there aren't going to be these big chunk plays in the run game, that you're really going to have to fist fight them for 4 quarters. And so initially when we were all like talking about this list, I didn't know where I would put them, because I was like, I do think they still have a long way to go when it comes down to pass rush. But in terms of run defense, yeah, I don't think there's a unit in the NFL that I would take over what the Lions have when we're talking about like, hey, you need to get to third and long. There's not a unit in the NFL that I'm taking over the Lions.
I don't think so either. But is it enough to put them in the top 5? I don't know, because run defense is great, but you want to look at any of the guys around the league who are getting paid. It's getting to the quarterback, and not just getting to the quarterback, but bringing the quarterback down. Like, you'll get paid for pressures, but you'll get paid if you bring the quarterback down, right? Like, it's just it's a tale as old as time. You know, there was the soundbite from Dan Campbell earlier in the offseason, you know, him talking about, you know, pressures being really valuable and people taking it out of context and being like, why would you rather have a pressure than a sack? And it's like, that's not what Dan was saying by any means. Like, sacks are obviously game changers. But if you have a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, who seems to be the king of pressure, a sack, or really, like with Aiden Hutchinson, it kind of seems like his sacks come in bunches. You know, he ends up with, you know, so many sacks in a year, and it's like, man, I don't really feel like, you know, that sack total is what it is, but it's because he, you know, in his rookie season, you know, all those sacks against the Commanders, or, you know,
keep putting the Cowboys on the schedule, Aiden's going to have 3 sacks.
Right.
Just keep doing that.
Right. Like, so there's something to that about his game, and I think you see that with, like I said, Aleem, you see that with Aiden Hutchinson. It's just about like developing a more consistent approach game to game. And I think that, you know, we talked about Hank Fraley in our offensive line video, but you got to talk about how excited everybody in Detroit is when it comes to Terrell Williams coming over from Tennessee, and what kind of change that could have on this defensive line, maybe taking another step.
Yeah, they've been singing his praises like crazy. Like Dan Campbell openly called him the best and the best defensive line coach in football. And hopefully, if he can bring stuff out of, like, if we get another Hank Fraley on our hands, man, oh my goodness, because then you're pulling all that you can out of guys like Broderick Martin and Josh Pascal and these guys that still have room for growth and like room to develop in their games. And that's when I'm like, okay, I get where y'all put them fourth. You know, I'll hear your argument out. I'm here for it. But
yeah,
it's like we said at the top, it's a lot of projection right now, and I still do think like they're a top 10 unit. But we mentioned some of the teams, you know, that are probably a little underrated. But we'll see.
Yeah, and Morgan, you and I have done a couple of videos already where we've sung the praises of DJ Reader. We've sung the praises of Aleem McNeil. So it's not like we're saying it's completely far-fetched. It's just, Ryan, to your point earlier, it's about consistency. And what have we seen consistently? Well, we've seen this unit be a good run defense at least all of last season. Can they continue to do that consistently? And if they are, first and foremost, this defense will thrive as a whole, right? Like, not just the D line, but the linebackers will be better. The secondary that is completely revamped is going to look a lot better because you have such a dominant defensive line. But it's one of those things where, yeah, fourth is a little rich. Another team that I think is a little too high on this list, and Ryan, you kind of pointed out, is the Jets. As much as I think we all can attest that Quinnen Williams is an absolute monster, right? Arguably the first or second best defensive tackle in football. I don't know if the rest of that group screams number one, especially when you look at who's number 2 on this list in the San Francisco 49ers.
I look at the Jets and I don't see the premier pass rushing edge. Like, yeah, there's Hassan Reddick, and I guess we'll see if he plays. But beyond that, like, who's like, they don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have a TJ Watt. They don't have a, you know, even Danielle Hunter. They're, you know, the Texans, I think, are ranked 10th. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Those are pretty good bookends to have. I mean, figure out whatever you want to do along the interior, but we also watched the Lions get by just fine with Benito Jones last year. So we know that can kind of just be plug and play. You can get replacement level play from a guy along the interior. And, if your guys on the outside are racking up 11, 12 sacks, well, okay, well then everything's gravy. You're fine. You're making big impact plays. Now, it might not get you all the way to the Super Bowl because, the Chiefs can do that because they have a cheat code. Chris Jones is a cheat code.
Yeah.
But to your point, like that, it's Quinnen Williams, right? Like, so maybe, okay, you have, if Quinnen's not the top guy, he's number 2 because Aaron Donald retired.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, like, if you can get guys who can, just eat off the edge, okay, well, then it makes sense. But Morgan, that's what makes me, and this is part of the discussion I think we need to have now with the Lions, is everybody who's been so perplexed that the Lions haven't added an edge opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, so desperate for the Lions to get a quote-unquote bookend for Aiden. Marcus Davenport, is he that guy? He's on another prove-it deal. But, like, how much does DJ Reader just change all the calculus to this?
A lot, man, because having a Reader on the interior is going to just draw so much attention. Like, when I watched film of him, if you didn't block him with 2 interior offensive linemen, he took it as like a slight and just would run through the guard or the center's chest and just walk them back into the quarterback. So on early downs when he's in the game, you're going to have to block him with 2 people, and it just frees up everyone else. And then when on passing downs, you're going to be able to rotate guys in and generate one-on-one matchups. You could stack Aleem and Hutch on the same side, which I'm sure like teams like the Raiders and the Niners do with Bosa and Armstead, but you get the point. But I really do think it changes the calculus. And if you get, like, Marcus Davenport has already shown, like, he's a good player. Like, did he get drafted a little too high? Sure, but we can say that about a lot of players, right? But if he's healthy,
he's got juice.
Yeah, he's the pass rush move bag could get a little deeper, and again, hopefully Terrell Williams can earn that money and really show that he's the best in the game, because if you have someone like that opposite of Hutch, then that's fine too. It's going to be a luxury. I think some of these teams see, like, the guys that have, like, you have Bosa, and then like who they had on the other side forever. I'm drawing a blank. They've had Eric Armstead. They've had dudes, and it's tough. Like, not every team can have a Will Anderson and a Daniil Hunter. Like, it's tough to do. There's only so many of those guys.
Yeah.
Right?
The 49ers they had DeForest Buckner, and it was like, okay, like we can't afford to pay everybody, so we'll send you off, and I mean, and then it's at the trade deadline, we'll pick up Chase Young. It's like, okay, all right, well, didn't work out so well, but still made it to the Super Bowl.
They still have Hargrave. I forgot about that too. They still have Javon Hargrave. Man, there's a reason that should be one. The Jets feel like remember that Eagles team that had all them free agents back in the day? Like, and then everyone was like, the dream team. That's what the Jets are giving right now. I don't want to put the juju on them because they are a tortured fan base. Like, the last time they made the playoffs was 2010. Your boy couldn't drink alcohol. So, like, that's wild. And I don't want that for them. But it's kind of giving some, especially because their quarterback's a bad person. But I won't go there.
I was just about to say, like, this is uncanny of you. You're being actually nice to another fan base. I don't care if the Jets do suffer. I feel like this is what you deserve. You paid Aaron Rodgers. This is the bed that you made. All right, lay in it. Yeah. But I'm right there with you guys. Yes. I think DJ, like you said, Morgan, we've talked a lot about DJ Reader, and I do think he changes everything for this defensive line. And so if there's a reason, again, while we're going to have them climb with the rankings, it does start with him and how he unlocks so many things for each of these players that are going to be lined up next to him. He unlocks things for Aleem, where Aleem should see more one-on-one opportunities and be able to grow as a pass rusher and start to make that jump, Ryan, that you alluded to earlier, of maybe starting to knock on the door of being a top 5 defensive tackle, at least a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFC at the very least, with just his performance. And obviously that's going to trickle down to, again, Aiden getting fewer double teams and triple team situations. And it gives room for a guy like Marcus Davenport or Josh Paschal or James Houston, or hell, if they want to get crazy and try Levi Onwuzurike out at the edge. Like, it gives so many more opportunities for guys to grow and elevate themselves, to take advantage of an opportunity to win a one-on-one matchup and to generate a sack and generate more pressure. So that's, again, it's a little crazy to see them ranked this high, but I think once we start to peel back the layers, you factor in the run game, you factor in, the impact of a player like DJ Reader, the ascension of an Aiden Hutchinson, the ascension of an Aleem McNeil. It makes sense why this group can be in the top 10. We'll have to see by the end of the season, though, with wherever the Lions end up, whether they're, in the playoffs again, maybe potentially even in a Super Bowl, how impactful this defensive line was, and were they the catalyst to help propel this team forward. But that's pretty much going to do for this.
I got
go
one
ahead,
last
Chris.
thing to say. There's no way we can do this on Canada Day and not at least just mention Matthew Betts. I just had to do that.
Shout out John Whitaker.
I was going to say, you just wanted to do something nice for John. That's
I gotta throw the guy a bone.
Yeah.
He's having he's having the off season of a lifetime when it comes to being a Canadian football fan.
A Canadian football fan that's a fan of the Lions, to have 2 Canadian players on this team.
And Giovanni Manu, yeah.
Yeah, he has 2 North American franchises that are Lions, and he's just having a field day with both of them.
All right, well, shout out to you, John. The fact that, yes, we did not mention Betts.
Matthew Betts, yeah.
But yeah,
shout out to John, shout out to Canada. All that.
Love it. But that's pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. Let us know what you guys think about PFF ranking the Detroit Lions defensive line 4th best in the NFL. Do you think that's a little too high? Do you think they actually could be even higher? Or do you think that's a perfect spot for them? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, we currently have our roster preview series going on the Pride of Detroit website. Be sure to check that out. There have been articles already written about Aleem McNeil, Khalif Raymond, and the list goes on and on. So definitely head over there, check out those articles, and get an insight into those players and how some of our writers feel that these players will take their game a step further going into the 2024 NFL season. Also, if you want to stay tapped into any of the videos we're uploading over here on the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and then every time we upload a video and potentially in the future go live for something, you'll be notified that we are actually doing that and can tune in and be a part of those moments with us. But with all of that said, I'm Meko, he's Ryan, he's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll be sure to catch you guys in the next one.